Hello. What is your name?
My name is Tom Lee.
And what do you do?
I'm a lawyer in Raleigh, North Carolina with a law firm called Womble Carlisle, Sandridge and Rice.
And today I'm going to ask you a few things about doing an interview on using math in the real world.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that this would be a good thing to talk about.
Okay.
So, what are some ways that you use math in your everyday working?
Well, my work involves municipal bonds. I work with cities, counties, and others when they issue their bonds. And when you issue bonds, a whole lot of math has to come into play. We have to know how much money we're going to borrow. And then the borrower, say Wake County, for instance, is going to pay the lender for the use of the lender's money and what we call that payment interest. And interest is computed at different rates based upon a lot of different factors. And what that really means is when we say different rates, we're going to pay different amounts of money to the lender based upon things like how long you borrow the money for, what the what kind of credit we're talking about. Is it somebody who's very credit worthy, or they're not quite as credit worthy? All those things go into determining how we're going to compute how much money we're going to pay to the lender, which we call interest.
That's good. Is there anything that you're doing currently that involves some of these things that you're working
On a daily basis, this is a real big part. Doing math is a very big part of what we do because whenever somebody borrows money, there's going to be interest involved, and we have to determine from there how much money that's going to be paid out on that, and that gets into things like both how much money will be paid out, but also what people will pay for their bond. What's the value of that bond going to be? I have here, this is an example if you want to put that in front of the screen. This is a document. Whenever we sell bonds, there's a document that goes to the people who buy the bonds that tell them what they get. This is one from a transaction I did a couple of years ago with the Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority, and it shows for a big bond issue for the new terminal at Raleigh-Durham. So if you want to put that in front of the camera.
All right.
Okay. And this is the front page of that offering document that shows how much money we borrowed and so forth. Now, if you can go down one page, scroll down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll stand with you here. You can hold this up and I'll point out a few things.
Okay.
This is what we call the maturity schedule for the bonds. This is how many bonds come due in each year. So for instance, this deal was done a couple of years ago. So on May 1st, 2014, $5,510,000 worth of bonds will become due. They bear interest at a rate of 4%. However, the people who bought these bonds paid more than the $5,510,000 for that. So they have an after-tax return, or rather, they have a return on the bonds, that what we call the yield, which is a different way of looking at the interest rate, where we take more factors into account in doing the mathematics. They have a yield of 1.23%. So if I buy this bond, I pay a certain amount, I'm paid interest at one rate, and that gives me a total return of another rate. All that we get from using mathematics and math. And it's very important because knowing that yield is important because I can determine whether one bond is more valuable to me than another bond. You can see, I was talking earlier about how how long we borrow the money for makes a difference on the rates and so forth. You can see the longer we borrow the money for, the higher the higher the yield will be. So we start out, the money that we borrowed for a very short period of time is only 0.29%, which is very low. And then the money we're borrowing down here for almost 30 years gives us a yield of 4.375%.
Mm-hmm. Is there any last things, or is that about it? Or
No. It comes up on a daily basis on, in all kinds of different ways. There's also percentages that we have to do. The federal tax laws, for instance, say if we use tax-exempt bonds to finance certain activities, and there's a percentage of that facility, there's a very small percentage of that facility that can be used by private businesses, and we have to use all kinds of mathematics to determine that percentage. That's another example of how we use math in bond law.
okay, well, thank you for talking to us today.
It was my pleasure.
All right.